It was one of those nights that felt heavier than usual. Rain-slicked streets, neon signs reflecting off puddles, and the quiet hum of people rushing past. But in the corner of a tiny, almost empty diner, David sat alone. He pushed around the last bite of a cheap burger, a simple meal he could actually afford without worrying about bills or rent. A single dad for 5 years, life hadn't exactly handed him a winning lottery ticket. And tonight, he was on a date, if you could call it that, a way to remind himself that he was still allowed to be human, still allowed to hope for something more. David glanced at the clock, nervously tapping his fingers. He wasn't nervous because he was meeting someone new. He was nervous because he had spent the last hour mentally calculating whether the whole night would cost him more than he could handle. Money was always tight, and any small indulgence felt like a luxury he didn't deserve. But he told himself it was just one night. One small attempt at normalcy. One chance to feel alive again, beyond diaper changes, homework, and overtime shifts. And then he noticed him. Across the room, at the next table, a man leaned back in his chair, effortlessly relaxed, watching him like he was reading a book that no one else could understand. Not in a creepy way, not in a "who is that weirdo" way, but in a way that made David's stomach twist with curiosity and a little unease. The man was impeccably dressed, the kind of suit that could make anyone feel underdressed in a hoodie and sneakers. He sipped his water slowly, eyes never leaving David, studying him like someone trying to solve a puzzle that had just appeared on their table. David felt his chest tighten. Who was this guy? And why did it feel like he'd been waiting for him? Exactly here, at exactly this diner. He tried to focus on his burger, to convince himself he was imagining it, but something about the way the man smiled, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, made it impossible to look away. It was absurd, really. A cheap date, a tiny diner, and now, this stranger, whose presence seemed to fill the whole room, watching him as if he held the key to something important. David's mind raced. Should he ignore him? Pretend he didn't see him? But even as he thought that, the man was standing up, sliding a hand across the table, walking toward him with a confidence David couldn't even fake on his best day. And just like that, the ordinary night David had carefully planned to be unremarkable was about to change in a way he never could have imagined. The kind of change that could turn his world upside down. Maybe for better, maybe for worse. David took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had no idea that the next few minutes would challenge everything he thought he knew about luck, opportunity, and what a single night could mean for a man who had almost given up on believing anything good could happen. And then the man reached the table, and with a voice calm but commanding, he said something that made David freeze. David blinked, trying to process the words the stranger had just spoken. His heart was still racing, the cheap diner suddenly feeling impossibly small. For a moment, he wondered if he should just apologize and retreat back into his booth, pretending none of this had happened. But something in the man's eyes, calm, focused, almost kind, made him pause. A single dad in his mid-30s, David had built his life around his 8-year-old son, Ethan. The boy was the brightest part of his day and the loudest, sweetest little alarm clock he'd ever had. Life hadn't been easy. After a messy divorce 2 years ago, David had worked double shifts, sacrificed nights out, and eaten more instant noodles than he cared to count, just to keep a roof over their heads. But despite the exhaustion, the bills, and the constant weight of responsibility, he had somehow managed to create a home filled with laughter, bedtime stories, and quiet moments of comfort. Dating, though? That was a different story. Every attempt seemed doomed. He tried online apps, blind setups, even the occasional casual coffee meetup. But somewhere between the stress of parenting and the fear of being judged for his modest life, he always ended up alone. So tonight was a small, brave attempt. A cheap dinner, some conversation, a fleeting chance to remind himself that he was more than a dad with 2 jobs. The stranger, David still didn't even know his name, looked nothing like anyone David had met before. There was a polished ease about him, the kind of presence that made people naturally pay attention. From the way he carried himself, it was obvious he had wealth and influence, the kind of life David could only glimpse from the outside. Yet despite that, there was no arrogance in his approach, only curiosity, almost like he'd noticed something in David that no one else had. David's hands shook slightly as he reached for his cup, trying to calm himself. Can I help you?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral, even though every nerve in his body was screaming otherwise. The man smiled faintly. "I think you might be able to," he said. And that was it. No introductions, no explanations. Just a simple sentence that carried the weight of 1,000 questions. For a moment, David considered walking away. It would have been safer, quieter. But there was something magnetic about the stranger's presence, something that hinted that this wasn't just a random encounter. And deep down, David felt a flicker of hope, a dangerous, thrilling hope that maybe, just maybe, tonight could turn into something extraordinary. Yet the diner around them remained oblivious. Other patrons chatted quietly, the waitress wiped down counters, and the rain tapped steadily against the window. Nothing seemed out of place, except for the invisible tension building at David's table. He realized then that this meeting wasn't just about curiosity or coincidence. There was an unspoken question hanging in the air, something neither of them had voiced yet. And for the first time in a long while, David felt the strange, almost terrifying possibility that his life, the careful, routine life he'd built to survive, might be on the brink of change. But change always comes with a price. And David had no idea what kind of choice he was about to face, or how much he was about to risk. David sat frozen, staring at the stranger across from him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was no longer just on a quiet, awkward dinner date. He was part of something bigger, something he didn't yet understand. "Look," the man began, leaning slightly forward. "I don't usually do this, but I've been watching you." David blinked. "Watching me?" His voice was half disbelief, half irritation. "I think you've got the wrong guy." "No," the man said, his tone calm but firm. "I know exactly who you are, and what you've built." David's mind raced. Built? He had nothing to show off. A small apartment, a part-time job in retail, a kid who was the center of his universe. That was it. And yet, this stranger, dressed like he'd stepped out of a magazine, seemed to see something more. Something that made David feel both exposed and important, in a way he hadn't felt in years. "I don't understand," David admitted, trying to steady his voice. "Why me? Why tonight?" The stranger's lips curled into a faint, almost knowing smile. "Because you're honest. Because you've struggled and still kept going. Most people, they'd crumble, but you keep moving, even when life keeps hitting hard." David's chest tightened. Compliments didn't usually make him this nervous, but there was something unsettling about the man's insight. It was too precise, too deliberate. He wanted to ask who this guy really was, what he wanted, but the words stuck in his throat. "What do you want from me?" David finally managed, his eyes narrowing. The stranger paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "I want to offer you a chance. A choice. Something that could change your life, completely." David felt his stomach drop. Change. The word echoed in his mind, bringing both hope and fear. He wasn't naive. He knew that when someone promised change, it usually came with strings attached. And yet, he couldn't look away, couldn't stop imagining what this could mean. Before he could respond, the man leaned closer, voice dropping just enough to make David's pulse quicken. "But it won't be easy, and it won't be free." David's hands gripped the edge of the table. He wanted to ask more, to understand the risks, but something in the stranger's eyes told him he wasn't ready to hear the full story yet. And deep down, he realized the choice wasn't just his to make. A sudden crash of thunder rattled the diner windows, and for a split second, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. And in that moment, David knew his life was about to change, but he had no idea how far he would be pulled in, or what he might lose along the way. David thought he had a grasp on the situation. Wealthy stranger, mysterious offer, risky choice. But then, the man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, black envelope. "I need you to know something before you decide," he said, sliding it across the table. "This isn't just about opportunity. It's about your son." David froze, his stomach dropping. "Ethan?" The stranger nodded slowly, eyes locked on David's. "You think this is just a chance to change your life. But it's bigger than that. One wrong move, and your world, everything you've fought for, everything you love, could be gone." David's hands shook as he opened the envelope. Inside was a photo. Ethan, smiling at a park, completely unaware. But there was something off. In the background, a shadowy figure was watching. And beneath the photo, a note in sharp, precise handwriting. "Decide carefully. Time is shorter than you think." David's heart raced. panic and disbelief colliding. The stakes had just leapt from abstract risk to a direct threat to the one person he lived for. Suddenly, the diner no longer felt safe. Every sound, every passerby outside the window, seemed like a potential danger. And in that moment, David realized the choice wasn't just about his future, it was about survival. David's hands were clammy, the black envelope still trembling in his grip. The diner felt impossibly small, the soft hum of conversation outside a cruel contrast to the storm roaring inside his chest. Ethan's face haunted him, innocent, trusting, completely unaware of the danger lurking just beyond the edges of his life. The stranger leaned closer, voice low and urgent. "You need to decide now. Accept my offer, and everything changes, for both of you. Refuse, and, well, let's just say some doors don't stay closed." David swallowed hard, mind racing. He had no idea what this offer truly meant, but he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down harder than ever. For Ethan, he would walk through fire if he had to. For himself, he had nothing left to lose, except his son. "I don't even know what you're offering," David said, his voice cracking. "How can I choose something that could ruin us, or save us, without knowing what it is?" The stranger's eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. "That's the point. Life rarely gives you guarantees. But I've been watching you for a reason. I know what you're capable of. I'm giving you a chance to prove it, to risk everything to protect what matters most." David stared at the envelope, then back at the man, and in that split second, he made a decision. He wouldn't let fear control him. He would fight for Ethan. Whatever this offer was, he would face it head on. "I'll do it," David said, voice firm. The stranger's lips curved into a faint smile. "Good. Because you're about to discover that what you thought was dangerous was only the beginning." Before David could respond, the diner door burst open, and a group of men in dark coats stepped inside, scanning the room. One of them's gaze locked on David, and a chill ran down his spine. The stranger stood, placing a hand on David's shoulder. "Time to move. If we don't act fast, it'll be too late." David's heart pounded, adrenaline surging. He didn't know if he was ready, if he could trust the man, or even if they'd make it out alive. But he had no choice. Ethan depended on him. And as he followed the stranger into the stormy night, David realized the true danger wasn't the unknown opportunity. It was everything waiting for him just outside the diner, and the shocking revelation he was about to face. The rain slammed against David's jacket as he ran beside the stranger, the city lights blurring in streaks of red and gold. His mind raced faster than his feet, replaying every moment of the night. The diner, the envelope, the shadowy figure in Ethan's photo. He didn't know exactly what he was running toward, but he knew it was the only path to protect his son. They ducked into an alley, and the stranger finally stopped, letting David catch his breath. "Listen," he said, voice calm but urgent. "Everything you just saw, it was a test. Not just of courage, but of heart. You chose to act, not out of greed or fear, but out of love. That's what matters." David stared at him, confusion and relief mingling. "A test? All of this?" The stranger nodded. "The men you saw, they were hired to scare you, to see if fear would make you freeze. Most people would have run, or given up. But you stepped forward. And that's why you're here, why you'll get the chance to change your life, and Ethan's." David's chest tightened. For years, he had believed that life only offered small, safe victories. Tonight, he realized there were moments where courage could open doors you never imagined. "Where's Ethan?" David asked, finally allowing himself to hope. The stranger smiled and handed him his phone. A live video feed showed Ethan, laughing at a playground, completely safe. The relief washed over David, almost knocking him off his feet. You did it," the stranger said. "You proved that love is stronger than fear. That's the kind of person worth investing in." David blinked, overwhelmed. "Investing? What do you mean?" The stranger chuckled softly, sliding a business card across his hand. "Let's just say, a chance to secure your future, financially, personally, everything, has been waiting. All you had to do was show you were ready to fight for what matters." David held the card, staring at it like it was a ticket to a new world. But more than that, he realized the night had taught him something far bigger than wealth or opportunity. He had learned that courage, love, and choice were more powerful than any money could ever be. As he walked home, finally reunited with Ethan, The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the city lights. He felt lighter than he had in years, ready to face the challenges of being a single dad with a renewed sense of strength and a story he'd never forget. And yet, as David tucked Ethan into bed that night, he noticed a small envelope on his nightstand. No markings, no explanation. Inside was a single note in neat handwriting. "This is only the beginning. Choose wisely, David." He smiled nervously, realizing that some stories never truly end, and that life, like love, always demanded courage for the next chapter.